All right, so I wanted to make this video in response to some Instagram Q&As that I was doing. I got a lot of questions. It was so crazy. I had a question this morning about should you do cardio on the Look Like You Lift program, which is a bodybuilding program, because they're trying to lose weight. And then I got some questions about high intensity interval bodybuilding, which I'm not quite sure what that is. I mean, I can kind of put it together. So I wanted to, and I was out there doing like all of these videos in 15-second clips, and it was just going crazy. So I wanted to sit down today and just kind of discuss, should you be doing cardio during a fat loss cycle, how to understand if you need it, what are the benefits of doing it, what are the negatives and drawbacks of doing it. Because during a weight loss cycle, most people, when they say they want to lose weight, they really want to lose body fat, right? And they want to try and preserve as much muscle, because if you're trying to lose weight, you probably want to have a certain aesthetic. Obviously, there's health implications involved in terms of like dropping, dropping cholesterol, blood pressure, all of that stuff. But the biggest thing is we want to basically look better. And if we lose a bunch of weight, but we don't maintain our muscle mass, we're just going to be lighter on the scale and not look great. And that goes for athletes, that goes for anybody. So body composition is what I'm talking about here. So when I would say lose weight, I mean lose fat, specifically in retaining or even gaining muscle, which is something that beginners can really do, and even intermediates. So should you be doing cardio to lose fat? Maybe, but in reality, I'm going to make a case today that maybe it's your last resort, and hopefully you don't have to do that. So when we go here, should you do cardio? There's a couple different scenarios here that I'm thinking about, and I kind of went through should you or should you not. So if you're training hard, and hard's obviously relative, but if you're training higher volume, moderate to high rep ranges, and you're doing that, and you're eating in a way that puts you in a caloric deficit, which you're in a caloric deficit because you're losing weight, on a week-to-week basis, you don't really need to do cardio, right? Because the biggest things we want to think about when losing weight is it's going to come down to diet, and then we want to make sure that we're hitting weights, at least 3 days a week. I would say 4 to 5, as you can see down here below, because those are the two biggest factors that are going to help us maintain our muscle mass, maintain our physique, get toned, get lean, but lose the body fat. When we do cardio, which I'll see down here, we might need to do it, or yes, we should do it. We're not really doing anything to preserve and gain muscle mass, so that's kind of a negative there. And all we're doing is really burning calories in that moment, which if you're already losing weight because you're not eating a lot, you don't need to add all that stress, because now you're just losing weight too fast, and that could actually be pretty catabolic and kind of leave you in a bad situation. So if you, however, are not training hard, or let's say you're training hard but you're not training in like high volumes, maybe you're like a weightlifter or powerlifter, you're peaking for meet, trying to get in a weight class. So you're training hard but not in high volume, so I guess that's what that is. But you are still losing weight, even if it's slow progress, and the weight really, I think most people, like half a pound to a pound a week for most people is pretty average. If you're more than that, you're being pretty aggressive, and just know you're going to be flying too close to the sun at some point, and you're going to burn up. You still don't need it, right? Just because you're not training hard, but if your diet's on point, you don't necessarily need to be doing cardio, at least from a fat loss perspective. I mean, obviously, if you're an active person and you're training and you're getting your heart rate elevated and you're going on walks, you're going to get the heart health benefit. And I think that you can have that, but you don't actually need to be slaving away doing high intensity, crushing yourself with cardio. If you're training hard, trying to lose fat, and you're not losing weight, which is typically what a lot of people are doing, it means you're not in a caloric deficit. So we have to be in a deficit. And there's two ways that we can get in a deficit. We can either place ourselves in a deficit by still training hard with weights and eating a little less, right? Which, yes, you won't be able to train as hard. Maybe you will, depends on where you're at. But now you're in a caloric deficit, so we're back to that first scenario. Then you don't need to do cardio because you're in a deficit. Now, another way you could do it is what people are going to say is, well, I can't address my diet, kind of where it's at. I'm just going to add more cardio. And yes, you could do that. And we'll get down to kind of my solutions on why it's not the best idea. But you could do that, but understand that the more cardio you do, there's like a point of diminishing returns, because again, you're just spending calories. You're not doing anything with it. You're just spending it, but you're not getting anything back in terms of like building muscle, all that good stuff, increasing your metabolism for the long haul, right? For later on down the road, because the more muscle you get, the higher metabolism. It gets easier hopefully it gets easier for you to maintain healthier weights because you've increased your metabolism, because you've built all this new muscle during this phase. So that's kind of where it's at. I will say that if you're in this situation, right, you're training hard, you're not really losing weight, should you do cardio? My kind of third follow-up question would be like, how frequently are you training? So instead of just adding more cardio, I would really recommend just bumping up your weight training frequency, right? You're still gonna burn calories during those sessions, but you're gonna get so much more back out of it. You'll be able to hit more muscle frequency and training higher volumes. So you'll be able to train harder, get more out of your sessions, and you'll still burn the calories. And I think that's something that a lot of people, you know, they think, oh, I gotta do 2 days of cardio. No, like, do 5 days of weights, right? I think you're gonna get so much more out of it, not only in that period when you're trying to lose weight, but then when it's time to maintain the weight, you've preserved all this muscle mass or even gained more muscle mass. It's gonna make everything else easier down the road. And again, you're gonna look and feel better because you're actually gonna have the muscle and you're still gonna strip the fat instead of stripping the fat and also losing the muscle. Now there's one time that I think cardio can be helpful during a fat loss cycle, and that's if you are eating perfectly and you're just not losing the weight and you're still training hard 4 or 5 days a week with weights and you're just kind of like, what the heck's going on? I think then adding cardio into the mix in small doses, just enough to kind of move that needle. And I'll kind of go into what that looks like, but I think that's probably about the only time, the last resort, because you could say, okay, I'm going to train 7 days a week or 6 days a week or pull more sessions, and at some point you can only train your muscles so much they need to recover, and recovery is also an issue. And then you could also say, well, I'm just going to continue to eat less. And at some point, if you just continue to eat less, you're going to just progressively feel worse and worse and worse and worse until a point where you just can't train the way you need to train. And then you're going to just not be recovering, so you're not going to be building or even maintaining that muscle because you're just not recovering or you're not eating enough. So I think that's when you can add in cardio to help you, be in a calorie deficit without having to eat less. But that kind of only works if you're already kind of at that end stage. Personally, that's kind of where I think most people mess up, is they just try to like add more and more on and not address the diet. But the diet could still be addressed. So what types of cardio should you do? I'm a big fan of low intensity and low impact work. So low intensity meaning like below 80% of heart rate max, even maybe below 75. Things that when you're doing it, you could do it, 20, 30 minutes, you have a good heart rate going, you have a good breathing rate. If we were talking there, you could talk to me in like broken segments, but it's nothing where it's like jacking you up, that it's like getting you all crazy. Because there are benefits of doing that. Like for example, when we go the moderate, lower intensity instead of the high intensity realm, we're not really gonna eat up a bunch of muscle glycogen. We're not gonna have a bunch of muscle breakdown, which is already something we have to be concerned with because we're in a diet phase. Another one here is that it's not excessive stress on the systems, right? So we're not like screwing with the adrenal glands. We're not doing all that. And again, because you're typically in a calorie deficit, maybe even lower fat, it's pretty hard to like recover from that on top of already trying to train hard. So you only have limited amounts of that you can put into it. I want you to make sure you're putting that into the hard training, high intensity hard training with weights, not trying to do, interval and hill sprints and crazy stuff like that with cardio. I mean, that's all great stuff to do, but understand like very small limited doses, but understand that could also rough you up. So where it's, if you do crazy hard hill sprints and then, which actually I guess has some muscle building properties, but not as much as like say RDLs and squats. And then you go do RDLs and squats, you're gonna be excessively sore, your performance is gonna be down in there. So I would argue maybe hold off on the hill sprints for more like a phase where you can eat to recover properly. And then again, it could increase your hunger, like after like hard, strenuous, hard workout, you're ravenous, right? And if you're already trying to struggle with not eating and those hunger pains already, you're just kind of adding more onto your plate, pun intended. I like doing low impact intervals at times, short windows, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 30 on, 30 off, where it's, you're kind of in that low steady state cardio range, and then you pick a window where you maybe push a little harder, but you can always come back down. I like that. Again, I opt for low impact, so incline walking, anything like rower, elliptical, all that stuff's great. And that's kind of where it's going. The biggest thing is that we just want to make sure we're not replacing our weight sessions and they're not impeding our ability to hit the weights the next day or recover during that day. Because again, recovery is something we have to be concerned with. So my specific cardio recommendations, I'm a big fan of like max 2 to 3 days a week. You know, maybe this is adding on to a workout. You know, you're already at the gym. 10 to 30 minutes, you know, you figure that's 90 minutes of cardiovascular exercise, and that range, you're probably looking at burning like an extra 500 to 800 calories per week. That could be just enough to move that needle in the right direction, because you should already be really, really close to losing weight without it, right? We're just kind of moving that needle. If you're like gaining weight and you're doing all this other stuff, well, you're just eating too much, right? So like if your weight's just kind of stagnant right there, you can't eat any less, you know, and you're training hard, then that's kind of where that we can move that needle. But if you're not doing cardio, you're training hard and you're gaining weight, then you're not eating, you're just eating too much, and you got to focus on your diet first, right? This is really like a good thing to be doing if cardio, if like you're in that weight maintenance phase and your weight's just not moving, and you got to kind of nudge in the right direction. So again, I like that 60 to 75 or 80% of heart rate max. But that being said, like sometimes you can just be more conscious with like the 10,000 steps a day. So, you know, not necessarily going to the gym. Maybe you don't belong at a gym that has a bunch of these varieties of cardio equipment. You could go with just more walks outside. You can go on hikes on the weekend. You know, you could go and play with friends, walk your dog. And that's something that I was able to do during when everything was shut down, is I just became more active, and I was dieting, and I actually, you know, had one of my most successful diets during that phase where I was training, you know, 5 days a week, 3 of them in my basement with kettlebells, dumbbells, and then I was able to get my hands on some heavier weights 2 days a week. But I really didn't do any cardio other than that, and maybe some light boxing stuff like in my basement heavy bag, but that was about it. And I was really focused on weight training, making sure I maintained or even gained some muscle, and then diet. So that's really my recommendations for this. I hope you guys found this helpful. This was, again, questions that I get all the time, but I was trying to like give 15-second snippets on Instagram stories and just wasn't working. So I ended up doing it here. But you guys can check out a program if you're a weightlifter and you're looking to kind of gain some muscle and to lean out, and you know the diet component, but obviously the training component's big. If you're a weightlifter, I recommend like Look Like You Lift 1.0. It's a 20-week. It ends in like a peaking cycle, but that's really great. It has a lot of snatch technique, clean and jerk technique, strength, and hypertrophy work. I also recommend the 2.0, but that's really also if somebody isn't concerned so much, a weightlifter concerned about like prepping for a meet, or if it's somebody who doesn't really care about Olympic weightlifting. Like I get it, they just want to get stronger and jacked. Like maybe looking for athletic power. You're gonna have it's a 5-day week program. It's 15 weeks, undulated strength progressions, a lot of bodybuilding, and every other day it's kind of sprinkled with some weightlifting-esque things like a hang power clean or something like that, just to kind of get you moving. It's a great kind of off-season program for weightlifters or for anybody looking to build muscle, increase some power and strength, and then also just get after it and look like they lift. So you can check out those links below. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, make sure you guys follow me on Instagram, subscribe to this channel, comment below with any questions you have. I'll make more videos later.